Thanks for being here. If you're into this kind of story, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what you're doing right now. Are you working? Driving? Lying in bed unable to sleep? I want to know. Here's what you need to understand before we start. I run an auction house, but we don't sell paintings or antiques. We sell things that shouldn't exist. And tonight, something arrived that broke every rule we ever had. Something that made angels and demons forget their truce. Something that cost me everything I thought I knew about the world. This is what happened when God's own pen came up for sale. The vault beneath the old Philadelphia subway station smelled like copper and wet stone. It always did. 200 feet of concrete and forgotten railway tunnels separated us from the surface, from the ordinary world where people worried about mortgages and traffic. Down here we worried about different things, like whether the demon in the corner booth was going to honor his bid on the Spear of Longinus replica, or whether he'd try to take it by force. I stood at the auctioneer's podium, a reinforced steel platform that had seen more blood than most operating rooms. The vault stretched out before me, a converted maintenance chamber roughly the size of a high school gymnasium, exposed brick walls, sodium lights casting everything in amber. 73 attendees tonight, which was high. Word must have spread about the quality of tonight's lots. On my left, elevated on a stone dais, sat two angels, Raziel and Gadriel. I'd worked with them for 6 years, and I still couldn't look at them directly for more than a few seconds. They didn't glow the way people think angels glow. They absorbed light, pulled it into themselves until the air around them seemed thin, stretched. Raziel wore the appearance of a middle-aged woman in a gray suit. Gadriel preferred the form of a young man with silver hair. Both had eyes that held too much depth, like looking into wells with no bottom. On my right, the demons. Vasago and Orobus, ancient enough that their true names would crack human teeth to pronounce. They'd chosen forms that almost passed for human. Vasago looked like a college professor, complete with tweed jacket and wire-rimmed glasses. Orobus had gone for something more theatrical, tall, dark-skinned, with bone-white hair pulled back. They both smiled too much. Demons always smiled too much. Behind them, positioned at the vault's four corners, stood the other four guardians. Two more angels, Haniel and Kokabiel. Two more demons, Marcosius and Vine, the octet we called them. 4 and 4. Perfect balance. They'd maintained this auction's neutrality for 300 years, long before I was born, long before my predecessor, long before Philadelphia even existed as a city. The rules were absolute, no fighting within the vault, and no theft, no coercion. You bid, you pay, you leave. Angels bought weapons to lock away. Demons bought them to study. Necromancers bought them to use. Hybrids bought them to survive. Everyone came here because it was the only place in the world where they could do business without warfare. I'd inherited this position from my uncle, Garrett Monroe. He'd held it for 40 years before a stroke took him. Never married, no kids. Just me, his sister's son, the one family member who'd believed him when he said his night job was consultant work for private collectors. When he died and left me his keys, his books, his entire operation, I'd been 26 years old and working as an insurance adjuster in Baltimore. That was 11 years ago. Now I was 37, unmarried myself, and I'd seen things that made insurance fraud look like kindergarten. Tonight's first item sat on the display table, a bronze knife with a handle wrapped in something that might have been human hair. Might have been. With these items, you never really knew. Lot 17, I called out, my voice echoing off the brick. Damascus bronze, circa 800 BCE, purported to be one of the 7 blades used in the ritual of binding during the Assyrian period. Starting bid, 40,000. A hybrid in the third row raised his paddle, half human, half something else. They never told you what the other half was, and you learned not to ask. He had scales along his jawline and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. 40,000 to bidder 22. A necromancer 2 rows back, a woman named Helen Cortez, lifted her paddle. I'd sold to her before. She paid in cash and never asked questions. 50,000 to bidder 31. The bidding climbed. 60, 75, 90. The hybrid won it at 92,000. I signaled to my assistant, a thin man named Vincent who'd worked the vault even longer than I had. He packaged the knife, took payment, logged the transaction. We moved through the lots. A chalice that supposedly held the tears of a saint, a fragment of papyrus with script older than Sumerian, a small wooden box containing something I'd never opened and never intended to open. Whatever was inside breathed against the lid when you held it. 3 hours in, we'd moved 60 lots. Everyone was getting restless. The angels maintained their perfect stillness, but the demons had started shifting in their seats. Vasago checked his watch twice. That was unusual. Demons didn't care about time. Then Vincent brought out lot 68. The case was lead, lined with gold with 7 locks. We'd received it 3 days ago from a courier who'd arrived at my apartment at 3 in the morning. No return address, no note, just the case and a single instruction card. Do not open until auction night. Guard well. I'd stored it in my bedroom safe, a 6-inch thick steel box that had cost me 30 grand. For 3 nights I'd barely slept. The case hummed. Not audibly. You felt it in your chest, in your teeth, like standing next to high-voltage power lines. Now, under the sodium lights, Vincent set it on the display table. The vault went silent. I mean absolutely silent. The hybrid who'd won the bronze knife stopped counting his money. Helen Cortez, halfway through lighting a cigarette, let the lighter slip from her fingers. Even the demons stopped smiling. Raziel stood up. Angels don't stand up during auctions. In 6 years, I'd never seen it happen. Gadriel rose beside her, his face losing all pretense of humanity. For a moment, I saw what he actually was underneath. Light and geometry, patterns that hurt to perceive. On the other side, Vasago's smile finally fell away. Orobas hissed, a sound like steam escaping a broken pipe. All 4 corner guardians moved forward. Haniel and Kokabiel descended from their positions, wings beginning to manifest. Marcosius and Vine, their human facades cracking to reveal something reptilian beneath. I felt my heart hammering. This wasn't protocol. This was panic. Lot 68, I managed to say, though my voice sounded distant to my own ears. Provenance unknown. Item unexamined. Starting bid. Where did you get this? Raziel's voice cut through the vault like a blade. She was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen on an angel's face before. Fear. I don't know, I said. It arrived by courier. No sender information. Open it, Vasago said quietly. Too quietly. I don't have the keys. Open it anyway. Vincent looked at me. I nodded. He pulled a crowbar from under the display table, positioned it against the first lock and pushed. The gold bent. The lead cracked. One by one he broke the locks. When he lifted the lid, light spilled out. Not bright light. The opposite. It was light that seemed darker than the shadows around it. Light that pulled everything toward it. I felt it in my chest. That same humming I'd felt for 3 days, but stronger now. So much stronger. Inside the case, resting on black velvet, was a pen. It looked ordinary. Brass body, maybe 8 inches long, with a pointed nib that gleamed like it had just been dipped in ink. But the air around it rippled, bent, like looking through water. Helen Cortez was the first to speak. That's not possible. It shouldn't exist, Gadriel said, his voice hollow. It was unmade. Erased. Clearly not, Orobas said. I looked at the pen and felt something in my chest respond. The thing I'd been carrying for 7 years. The thing I never talked about. The thing I'd hoped to never use. It recognized what this was. And it was terrified. What is it? I asked, though part of me already knew. Raziel turned to face me fully. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute truth. The pen of God, the instrument of creation, what was used to write reality itself into being. The vault erupted, not in sound, in tension. Every entity in the room understood simultaneously what this meant. With that pen, someone could read what God had written. They could edit it. They could write new things into existence, or erase things from it entirely. A fallen angel in the back row lunged forward. Kokabiel intercepted him, slamming him into the brick wall hard enough to crack the stone. 3 necromancers started chanting, protective wards flaring up around their bodies. The hybrid with the scales grabbed his friend, a man with ram's horns, and they bolted for the exit. Everyone remained calm, I said, but my voice was lost in the chaos. That's when the north wall exploded. Not collapsed. Exploded. 200 feet of concrete and brick and steel rebar turned to powder in an instant, and through the dust cloud, something descended. I'd seen angels before. I'd seen demons. I'd seen things that wore the skins of both and things that were neither. This was different. He was 9 feet tall with wings that stretched 20 feet on each side. Not feathered. Membrane like a bat's but translucent, shot through with veins of light. His face was beautiful in the way a knife is beautiful. Sharp, perfect, merciless. He wore armor that looked like it had been carved from a star. White hot and blinding, and in his hand he carried a sword that sang. Actually sang. A high, keening note that made blood run from my nose. Samael, Raziel breathed. The archangel landed in the center of the vault, 20 feet from the podium. His eyes, too many eyes, layered across his face like scales, fixed on the pen. I have come for what was promised, he said, and his voice wasn't loud, but it vibrated through the floor, through the walls, through my bones. Raziel and Gadriel moved to block him. You cannot be here, Raziel said. This is neutral ground. The compact... Samael's wings swept out, casual, almost lazy. Both angels disintegrated. I don't mean they died, I mean they stopped existing. One moment they were there, the next moment there was just empty space and a smell like burning ozone. The vault went silent again. A different kind of silence. The silence of prey animals realizing they're in the presence of an apex predator. Vasago stepped forward, his human disguise falling away completely. What emerged was a creature of smoke and bone, with too many joints and a mouth that split his entire torso. You violate ancient law, he said. Ancient law, Samael repeated, as if tasting the words. There is no law older than me, demon. Step aside. No. The archangel moved. I'd watched professional fighters on television. I'd seen how fast humans could move when trained. This wasn't that. This was physics breaking. One instant, Samael was 20 feet away. The next, his hand was through Vasago's chest, gripping something that pulsed with dark light. The demon's heart, if demons have hearts. Samael crushed it. Vasago collapsed, his body turning to ash before it hit the ground. Orobas screamed, an actual scream, raw and primal, and launched himself at the archangel. Samael caught him by the throat with his free hand and spoke a single word. I didn't understand it, but reality did. Orobas's body folded in on itself, compressed, reduced to a sphere of darkness the size of a marble. The archangel flicked it away like a piece of lint. 4 guardians down. The other 4 charged. Haniel and Kokabiel came from above, manifesting weapons, a spear of light, a sword of glass. Marcosius and Vine came from below, their forms expanding, becoming grotesque and many-limbed. The fight lasted maybe 10 seconds. When it was over, all 4 guardians were dead or dying. Kokabiel lay in pieces. Haniel had been turned inside out. Marcosius burned with a fire that didn't produce heat. Vine simply stopped, frozen mid-attack, his body turned to salt. The octet was gone. 300 years of balance, destroyed in less than a minute. Samael walked toward the podium, his wings dragging across the floor, leaving gouges in the concrete. The surviving attendees, maybe half of the original 73, pressed themselves against the walls. No one ran. Running from something like this was pointless. I stood frozen behind the podium, watching him approach. The thing in my chest, the Brasa Viva, burned so hot I could barely breathe. It wanted me to use it, to activate it. but I couldn't. Not yet. Using it now would be suicide. Samael reached the display table and looked down at the pen. "Finally," he said softly. That's when I saw the figure behind him. A man, human-looking, mid-30s maybe. Ordinary face, forgettable. He wore jeans and a gray hoodie and sneakers, and he'd walked in through the hole in the wall like he was entering a coffee shop. He wasn't fighting, wasn't running, and just watching. Waiting. Our eyes met for half a second, and I felt my blood go cold. This wasn't a bystander. This was part of it. Part of the plan. The prophet. Samael reached for the pen. I moved without thinking, lunging across the podium, trying to grab it first, stupid, suicidal. But I couldn't let him take it. Couldn't let this happen. His free hand shot out and caught me by the chest. I flew backward, slammed into the brick wall 30 feet away. Something cracked. Ribs, vertebrae, I couldn't tell. Pain exploded through my entire body. I tasted blood, felt it running down my chin. Through blurred vision, I saw Samael lift the pen. I saw the prophet smile. And I felt the Brasa Viva pulse for the first time with absolute clarity. It was waking up, and it was hungry. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like someone had filled it with broken glass. Every inhale was agony, every exhale worse. I was on my back, staring up at exposed pipes and sodium lights that swam in and out of focus. The concrete beneath me was cold and wet. Blood, my blood, spreading out in a pool. I tried to sit up. Failed. Tried again. This time I made it to my elbows, though the movement sent fresh waves of pain through my ribs. The vault was chaos. Samael stood at the display table, holding the pen of God up to the light. He turned it slowly, examining it from every angle, and where his fingers touched the brass, reality warped. I saw colors that didn't have names, heard sounds that made my ears ring. The air itself seemed to bend away from him, creating a zone of empty space. The prophet stepped closer, standing just behind the archangel's left wing. Up close, I could see more details. He was younger than I'd first thought, maybe late 20s, clean-shaven, short dark hair. Nothing remarkable except his eyes, which held the kind of certainty that came from absolute faith. "Is it intact?" the prophet asked. His voice was soft, educated, East Coast accent, maybe Boston. Yes. Samael's many eyes shifted, layering across each other like shuffling cards. Undamaged, undiminished. They hid it well, but not well enough. Around them, the surviving attendees tried to escape. They didn't make it far. Samael's wings moved like blades, his shadows swallowed them whole. His mere glance turned protection wards to dust. Bodies dropped. Helen Cortez, the hybrid with scales. Father Douglas Caney and his useless Latin prayers. 10 people left, maybe fewer. Vincent was still alive. I could see him crouched behind the overturned podium, his face pale, hands shaking. He'd worked this vault for 30 years, seen things that would drive most people insane. But he'd never seen this. None of us had. I forced myself to my feet, using the wall for support. My vision swam. Something was definitely broken inside me. Ribs. Definitely ribs, maybe a lung. Each breath felt wet, heavy. But I couldn't stay down. Couldn't just watch this happen. The Brasa Viva burned in my chest. It had been there for 7 years, ever since I'd touched a coal-like artifact in the vault's storage. The moment my skin made contact, fire had burned into me, through my hand, into my chest. 3 days of agony, then the coal dissolved. But something remained. A seed. A spark. The Brasa Viva. The living coal. A weapon forged by a seraph. A last line of defense against threats even heaven feared. It would burn anything. Angel, demon, reality itself. But you could only use it once. After that, it consumed you too. For 7 years, I'd kept it secret. Never told the guardians, never told anyone. It was my insurance policy, my last card, but I'd hoped I'd never have to play it. Now, watching Samael examine the pen, watching the prophet wait patiently for his moment, I knew that hope was dead. I just had to time it right. Samael lowered the pen and turned to face the vault. His many eyes scanned the remaining survivors, cataloging them, dismissing them. "This sanctuary is ended," Samael announced. "The balance you maintained here was always an illusion." The prophet stepped forward. "The faithful will be given their reward. The unfaithful will be unmade, and the world will be rewritten in accordance with divine will." "Whose divine will?" I called out. The prophet smiled sadly. "God abandoned this world, left it to rot. But he left tools behind, instruments, and he left prophets, true prophets born of the original bloodline to complete what he started." "You're insane," someone said. "Insanity is believing this broken world is what God intended." Samael's wing moved. The speaker's head separated from his body. I needed to get closer. The Brasa Viva was powerful, but it wasn't long range. I'd have to touch Samael, make direct contact, and even then I wasn't sure it would be enough. An archangel was a different order of being. Would the Brasa destroy him, or would he simply shrug it off? Only one way to find out. I pushed away from the wall, took a step forward. My legs almost gave out. I caught myself, forced another step, then another. Samael watched me approach with something like amusement. "The auctioneer," he said. "You should be honored. You facilitated this. Without your neutrality, the pen would never have surfaced." I didn't know what it was. Ignorance is not innocence. I took another step, 10 feet away now, close enough to see the individual feathers on his wings, each one inscribed with text in a language that predated human civilization, close enough to smell him, ozone and iron and something else, something that reminded me of lightning strikes. "Let me ask you something," I said, buying time. "If God abandoned the world, why should anyone trust what you're going to write?" The prophet's expression hardened. "Because I am his instrument. I was born for this. My bloodline traces back to the original prophets, the ones who walked with angels and spoke with the voice of creation itself. I am not writing my will. I am writing his." "How convenient," I said, "that what God wants happens to be exactly what you want." Samael's hand shot out and caught me by the throat. He lifted me off the ground effortlessly. My feet kicked at empty air. His grip was cold, not physical cold, but the absence of heat, the absence of everything. My vision started to dim. The Brasa Viva burned hotter, screaming at me to activate it, to end this now. Not yet. "You are nothing," Samael said, bringing me closer to his face. His many eyes stared into mine, layering, multiplying. "A temporary caretaker of a temporary place. Your neutrality was a fantasy. Your balance was meaningless. When I leave here with the pen, this entire structure will be forgotten. Your name will be forgotten. You will be less than dust." His grip tightened. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world was narrowing to a pinpoint, to a single moment of desperate animal panic. The Brasa Viva pulsed. I managed to move my hand, just barely, and pressed my palm against Samael's wrist. "Not yet," I gasped. He looked confused for a moment. Then he threw me. I flew backward across the vault, 30 feet easy, and slammed into a support pillar. The impact drove all the air from my lungs. I heard ribs crack, tasted blood, copper thick in my mouth. I hit the ground hard enough to bounce. For a long moment I just lay there. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The ceiling swam above me, pipes and wires tangling into meaningless patterns. This was it. I was going to die here. The Brasa Viva had other ideas. It pulsed again, harder this time. Not a suggestion, a command. Heat flooded through my body, radiating out from my chest. My broken ribs shifted, grinding against each other, then began to fuse. Not healing. Healing took time, but being held together by pure will and fire. I gasped, sucked in air that burned like acid. Across the vault, Samael had turned his attention back to the pen. The prophet stood beside him, hands clasped like he was praying. "The vessel is prepared," the prophet said. "I can feel it. The moment is upon us." Then we waste no more time here. Samael's wings folded against his back. These remnants are beneath notice. They were leaving. Taking the pen. Vincent chose that moment to do something incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. He lunged out from behind the podium, holding something I recognized, a containment sphere designed to temporarily neutralize magical artifacts. He must have grabbed it when the fighting started. He triggered it as he ran, and a field of crackling energy expanded outward. It caught Samael's left wing. The archangel stopped, turned. "Vincent, no!" I tried to shout, but my voice was too weak. Samael reached out and touched Vincent's forehead with a single finger. Vincent's scream lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then his body began to unravel, not violently, almost gently, like a sweater being pulled apart thread by thread. His skin peeled away in strips, his muscles separated from bone. His bones themselves dissolved into dust. In 5 seconds there was nothing left but a stain on the floor and the smell of copper. The remaining survivors tried to run. Samael's shadow swallowed one whole. Another turned to glass and shattered. Within moments the vault was silent except for the sound of my breathing. I forced myself to my feet. The Brasa Viva was holding me together now, burning away pain, burning away fear. Everything felt distant, muffled. I could hear my heart beat slow and steady. Could feel the fire in my chest, waiting. I had one chance. One moment. Samael and the prophet reached the hole in the wall. Beyond it, I could see the tunnel, the darkness of the underground railway system. They'd disappear into it, and I'd never find them. The pen would be gone. Whatever they were planning would come to pass. I ran. Not a normal run. The Brasa Viva was burning through my muscles now, giving me strength that wasn't mine. I closed the distance in seconds, faster than I'd ever moved in my life. Samael sensed me coming. Started to turn, too late. I slammed into him from behind, both hands making contact with his armor. "Now!" I screamed to the Brasa Viva. "Now, you bastard, now!" And the living coal awakened. Fire exploded from my chest. Not red fire, not orange, white fire. So bright it turned the entire vault into a photographic negative. It poured through my hands, into Samael, into his armor, into his body. The archangel screamed. It was a sound I will never forget. Not a sound of pain. Angels don't feel pain the way we do. It was a sound of impossible wrongness. The sound of something eternal being forced to acknowledge its own ending. His armor began to crack. Light bled through the fractures, but it was the wrong kind of light. Sick light. Dying light. His wings caught fire. The membrane burned away, revealing the skeletal structure underneath, and even that began to dissolve. "What? What is this?" he managed to gasp. His many eyes were closing now, one by one, blinking out like dying stars. "Seraph weapon," I said through gritted teeth. The fire was consuming me too. I could feel it eating away at my insides, burning through everything I was. "Made for things like you." The prophet had stumbled backward, his face gone pale. No, this isn't. You can't." Samael reached for him, hand outstretched. "The pen. Take the—" But the pen was on the ground between us, dropped, when Samael had screamed. The prophet dove for it. I kicked it away. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Real, human fear. "This isn't over," he said. Then he turned and ran, disappearing into the tunnel. I wanted to chase him, wanted to stop him. But the Brasa Viva was devouring me now, and I had to finish this first. Samael's body was collapsing, folding in on itself. His armor turned to ash. His wings disintegrated. His many eyes closed, one after another, until only his face remained. That beautiful, terrible face, staring at me with something that might have been respect. "Well played, auctioneer," he whispered. "But the prophet lives, and he knows what must be done. You have won nothing." Then he was gone. Just ash and light and the smell of burning ozone. I fell to my knees, the fire still raging inside me. This was it. This was the price. The Brasa Viva had done its job, and now it was going to take what it was owed. My life. But then something unexpected happened. The pen rolled toward me, drawn by some invisible force. It stopped right in front of my hands. And the Brasa Viva hesitated. I felt it in my chest. Confusion. Uncertainty. The fire didn't know what to do. It had been designed to burn threats to creation. But here was the pen of God itself, the instrument of creation. How could it burn me when I was touching something that fundamental? The fire began to recede. Slowly. Reluctantly. But it receded. I was still alive. Barely. I picked up the pen with shaking hands. The moment I touched it, something clicked into place, like a key turning in a lock. The pen recognized me, or the Brasa Viva, or both. The vault was silent now. The survivors had fled, just me, alone in the ruins. I looked down at the pen, at my hands holding it, and I understood. This was never about Samael. He'd been a tool. A very powerful, very dangerous tool, but still just a tool. The real threat was the prophet, and he was still out there, still alive, still planning, and now I had what he needed. The silence after an apocalypse has a particular quality. It's not peaceful. It's hollow. Empty in a way that presses against your eardrums, makes you aware of every breath, every heartbeat, every small sound your body makes just by existing. I sat in the ruins of the vault for maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour. Time felt loose, unreliable. The pen rested across my lap, warm to the touch, not hot, just warm like it had been held by someone else moments before. Around me, the evidence of what had happened. Ash piles where guardians had stood, scorch marks on the walls, the copper smell of blood mixing with ozone and something else, something that reminded me of how the air smells after lightning strikes close by. My ribs ached. The Brasa Viva had stopped burning, retreated back to wherever it lived inside me. But the damage it had done on the way out remained. Every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. When I touched my chest, my fingers came away bloody. I needed to move, needed to get out of here before someone came looking. The explosion had been contained by the vault's wards, but those wards were failing now. I could feel them degrading, unraveling. Within hours, maybe less, this place would be exposed to the outside world. I stood up slowly, using the wall for support. My legs shook but held. The pen felt heavier than it should have, like it carried weight beyond the physical. I tucked it inside my jacket against my ribs. Then I started walking. The tunnel system beneath Philadelphia stretched for miles. Most of it was abandoned railway, shut down in the 70s when the city changed its transit plans. The perfect place for a secret auction house, the perfect place to disappear into. I walked for maybe 15 minutes before the vision started. At first I thought it was blood loss, hallucinations brought on by trauma and exhaustion. But these weren't random. They were specific, detailed, insistent. I saw the pen being forged, not by human hands, by something vast and incomprehensible, something that existed before existence had rules. I saw it writing the first words of creation, each stroke bringing new laws into being. Light, darkness, matter, time. I saw it being hidden, locked away, buried beneath layers of reality because even God recognized it was too dangerous to leave accessible, and I saw why. The pen didn't just write reality. It overwrote it. Every stroke erased what had been there before and replaced it with something new. In the wrong hands, or even the right hands, if those hands weren't careful, it could unravel everything. The prophet understood this. He'd been taught it by Samael, who'd been planning this for centuries. Find the pen. Find a true prophet, someone born of the original bloodline, someone whose genetic code still carried the echo of direct divine communication. Combine the two, and you had the power to remake creation itself. But there was something else in the visions, something the prophet didn't know. The pen had a failsafe. It required two things to function, a prophet's bloodline and a seraph's blessing. The bloodline provided the channel. The blessing provided the authority. Without both, the pen was just an artifact. Powerful, yes, Dangerous, absolutely, but inertly. And I had the blessing. The Brasa Viva wasn't just a weapon, it was a key. A piece of seraph fire bonded to my flesh, marking me as something between human and angel. Something that could touch the pen without being destroyed by it. The prophet had neither. He had the bloodline, but not the blessing. Without me, without the Brasa Viva, the pen was useless to him. Which meant he'd be coming for me. The vision faded, leaving me standing in the tunnel with a headache that felt like nails being driven into my skull. I leaned against the wall, breathing hard, tasting blood. I needed help, needed allies, but who could I trust? The guardians were dead. The auction was destroyed. Every supernatural entity in the city would know what had happened by now. Some would blame me. Others would want the pen for themselves. I thought about calling the police, then dismissed the idea immediately. What would I even say? Officer, an archangel destroyed an underground auction of forbidden artifacts and I killed him with seraph fire. Can you send backup? No. This was beyond human authorities, beyond human understanding. I kept walking. The tunnel opened up after another 10 minutes, connecting to a maintenance junction I'd used before. There was a ladder here, leading up to a subway grate near Market Street. I climbed slowly, my ribs screaming with every rung. The surface was dark. 3 in the morning, maybe later. The streets were empty except for a homeless man sleeping in a doorway and a taxi idling at a red light 3 blocks down. I needed somewhere safe. Somewhere I could think, plan, figure out what to do next. My apartment was out. If anyone was looking for me, that would be the first place they'd check. I had a backup location, a storage unit in South Philly, stocked with emergency supplies and enough cash to disappear if I needed to. But it was a 40-minute walk and I wasn't sure I could make it. I started anyway. 6 blocks in, I sensed I was being followed. Not obviously. Whoever it was kept their distance, stayed in the shadows. But I'd spent 11 years dealing with entities that hunted humans. You developed instincts. I turned down an alley, then immediately ducked behind a dumpster and waited. Footsteps, slow, careful, getting closer. A figure appeared at the alley's entrance, silhouetted against the streetlight, human-shaped, but something about the proportions was wrong. Arms too long, shoulders too wide. "I know you're there," a voice called out, male, deep, with an accent I couldn't place. I stayed silent. "The pen calls to those who can hear it," the voice continued, "and I can hear it singing. Frightened, confused. It doesn't understand why you're carrying it." I stood up slowly, hands visible. "Who are you?" The figure stepped into the alley. As he moved into the dim light from a window above, I got a better look. He was tall, maybe 6'5", with dark skin and eyes that glowed faintly gold. Not human, not entirely. "My name is Barakiel," he said. "I am what you would call a watcher, an observer. I was stationed in this city to monitor certain activities. The auction, among other things." He tilted his head, studying me. "You destroyed Samael. I felt it happen, felt the Brasa Viva ignite. That shouldn't have been possible. Samael was an archangel. You are human. Mostly human. Apparently." He took another step closer. I tensed, but he made no aggressive moves. "The question now is what you intend to do with the pen, because every entity in 3 states knows you have it, and they will come for it. Angels who believe it should be locked away, demons who want to study it, hybrids who think they can use it, and worse things, things that don't have names anymore. What about you? What do you want?" Barakiel was quiet for a moment, then, "I want to help you survive the next 48 hours. After that, we'll see." "Why would you help me? Because the alternative is worse?" He gestured at the pen, still tucked inside my jacket. "If that falls into the wrong hands, any wrong hands, creation ends. Not metaphorically, actually ends. And I've been alive for 6,000 years. I'd like to continue." I studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. Watchers were notoriously neutral. observers who avoided taking sides in the eternal war between heaven and hell. But they also had a vested interest in maintaining reality. If he thought the pen threatened existence itself, he might actually be genuine. Fine, I said. But we do this my way. I don't trust easily. Wise. He glanced over his shoulder. We should move. You're leaving a trail that anything with senses can follow. Blood. Fear. The pen's resonance. We need to get you somewhere shielded. I have a place. Your storage unit in South Philly? He smiled slightly at my expression. I've been watching you for 3 years. I know about your backup plans, but that location is compromised now. I have somewhere better. He led me through the streets, taking routes that avoided cameras and streetlights. We moved quickly but carefully, and twice he stopped us, waiting in shadows while something I couldn't see passed nearby. 20 minutes later, we arrived at an old church, St. Dominic's according to the faded sign out front. It had been closed for years, condemned after a fire in the 90s. Barakiel produced a key and let us in through a side door. Inside, the church was exactly what you'd expect from an abandoned building. Broken pews, water-stained walls, holes in the roof letting in moonlight. But underneath all that, I felt something else. Wards. Strong ones. Old ones. This place is consecrated ground, Barakiel explained. Multiple layers of protection built up over 2 centuries. Nothing demonic can enter, and most angelic entities won't risk it without serious cause. Most? Nothing's perfect. He led me to the back through a door marked sacristy and down a flight of stairs. Below, in what should have been a basement, was a surprisingly intact living space. Bed, desk, shelves lined with books, a small kitchenette. You live here? Sometimes, when I need to be invisible. He gestured at the bed. Sit. You're bleeding through your shirt. I sat, wincing as the movement pulled at my ribs. Barakiel disappeared into another room and returned with a first aid kit. He worked efficiently, cleaning the blood, checking for broken bones. His hands glowed faintly as he touched my ribs, and I felt warmth spread through my chest. This will help, he said. But you need real healing. The Brasa Viva did significant internal damage. It kept me alive. At a cost. He finished bandaging me and stepped back. Tell me what happened. All of it. So I did. I told him about the pen arriving at the auction, about Samael's attack, the Guardians dying, the Prophet, Vincent's death, my decision to activate the Brasa Viva. When I finished, Barakiel was silent for a long time. The Prophet escaped, he finally said. Yes, and he knows you have what he needs. The blessing? Yes. Then he'll come for you. Not immediately. He's smart enough to prepare. But soon. Barakiel moved to the desk, pulled out a map of Philadelphia, and spread it across the surface. We need to find him first. Strike before he's ready. How do we find him? Every true prophet has a tell, something in their nature that marks them, makes them visible to those who know how to look. He traced a finger across the map. There are only 7 bloodlines left that carry the original genetic markers. 3 of them are in the Middle East, 2 in Europe, 1 in South America, and 1 here in the United States. Where? That's the question. He looked up at me. The pen can help. It remembers its prophets. If you're willing to risk it, we can use it to locate him. I pulled the pen from my jacket and stared at it. The brass gleamed in the dim light. How? Write a question. The pen answers those who have the authority to ask. And if I write the wrong thing? Then reality changes in ways we can't predict. So be very, very careful with your phrasing. I found a blank piece of paper on the desk, held the pen over it. My hand shook slightly. What did I ask? Where is the prophet? Too vague. Where is the man who was with Samael? Better, but still imprecise. I thought about the visions, about what I'd seen. The prophet had been prepared his entire life for this, trained, indoctrinated. He wasn't just some random believer. He was a weapon, forged over decades. I wrote, "Where is the prophet who was prepared by Samael to use this pen?" The moment the nib touched paper, ink flowed, but I wasn't controlling it. The pen was writing by itself, my hand just along for the ride. Words appeared. Jonathan Priest, 2247 Walnut Street, apartment 8B. Currently preparing a secondary ritual. Requires 14 hours. The ink stopped flowing. I stared at the words, my heart pounding. Jonathan Priest, Barakiel read over my shoulder. I know that name. He's a theology professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Published several papers on divine communication and prophetic tradition. He looked at me. He's been hiding in plain sight. And we have 14 hours to stop him. Less than that. We need to prepare, scout the location. Understand what we're walking into. Barakiel rolled up the map. If he's preparing a secondary ritual, he has a backup plan, something that doesn't require the pen directly. What could that be? I don't know, but it won't be good. We spent the next hour planning. Barakiel had resources, weapons sanctified by various religious traditions, artifacts that could disrupt rituals, contacts in the supernatural community who owed him favors. We'd hit Priest's apartment at dawn, when he'd be most vulnerable, but as we prepared, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something. Some piece of the puzzle that would make everything make sense. I picked up the pen again, stared at it. Then I wrote another question, one that had been nagging at me since the visions. Why was I chosen to carry the Brasa Viva? The pen hesitated. Then it wrote, "Your bloodline was engineered 4 centuries ago as a failsafe. Human enough to avoid detection.
Angelic enough to bond with seraph fire. You are not random. You are contingency." I read the words 3 times. "Barakiel," I said quietly, "I need you to tell me something, and I need you to be honest." "What? How much of my life has been a lie?" He looked at the paper, read what the pen had written.
His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. "All of it," he said finally. "Your uncle didn't die of a stroke. He was killed because he discovered what you were. The auction wasn't passed to you by chance. You were placed there, positioned, made ready for exactly this moment. By who? By entities that saw this coming centuries ago. Angels who understood that one day someone would try to use the pen. Someone would need to stop them. And so they created bloodlines, bred humans with specific traits, planted them throughout history like seeds, waiting for the right moment to germinate." I felt sick. I'm not even really human. You're human enough. The genetic modifications were subtle, small tweaks over generations, but yes, you were designed, engineered, created for a purpose. To stop the prophet. To stop anyone who tried to misuse the pen. Barakiel moved closer. "Does it matter? You are who you are. What you do next, that's what matters." He was right. The revelation changed nothing practical. I still had the pen, still had the Brasa Viva, still had a prophet to stop. But it meant something. It meant I'd never had a choice. Not really. My entire life had been a railroad leading to this moment. "We should rest," Barakiel said. "Dawn comes in 5 hours. You need to be ready." I lay down on the bed but didn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling, thinking about Jonathan Priest, about Samael, about the pen and what it could do, and about what I'd have to do to stop it. Dawn came gray and cold. Barakiel drove us to Walnut Street in a nondescript sedan that smelled like old leather and sage. We parked 2 blocks from Priest's building and walked the rest of the way. The apartment building was old but well-maintained. Red brick, maybe 10 stories, with a doorman who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "How do we get in?" I asked. Barakiel walked up to the door and spoke briefly to the doorman. I saw him touch the man's wrist, just a brief contact, and the doorman's eyes went distant. He nodded and let us through. "Suggestion," Barakiel explained in the elevator. "Won't last long, but long enough." Apartment 8B was at the end of a long hallway. The door looked normal, standard lock. No words that I could sense. Barakiel knocked. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Professor Priest, we need to speak with you. Still nothing. He's in there, I said. I could feel it. The pen was responding, humming against my chest. And he knows we're here. Barakiel tried the door handle. Locked. He pressed his palm against it, whispered something, and the lock clicked open. We entered slowly, weapons ready. The apartment was normal. Too normal. Living room with a couch and TV, small kitchen, bookshelves lined with academic texts, everything neat, organized, unremarkable. Except for the smell, sulfur, blood, something else, something that made my eyes water and my stomach turn. Bedroom, Barakiel said, pointing. The door was closed. Light bled from underneath it, pulsing in rhythm with something I could feel in my teeth. We approached. Barakiel reached for the handle. The door exploded outward. We were thrown backward, slamming into the opposite wall. The hallway filled with light. Not white light, but something darker. Crimson shot through with black. Jonathan Priest stepped out of the bedroom. He didn't look like a theology professor anymore. His skin was marked with symbols that writhed and shifted. His eyes were completely black, no whites visible. When he spoke, his voice had layers, like multiple people speaking at once. You're too late, he said. The ritual is complete. Impossible, Barakiel said. We had 14 hours. Priest smiled. The pen was wrong. Or rather, you asked the wrong question. I didn't need 14 hours for my secondary ritual. I needed 14 hours for you to arrive, and here you are. Behind him, I could see into the bedroom. The walls were covered in text. Not written, carved. Deep grooves in the plaster, bleeding something that wasn't blood. And in the center of the room, hovering in midair, was a sphere of light so dense it looked solid. What did you do? I asked. I opened a door, Priest said. Called something through. Something that doesn't need the pen, something that predates creation itself. The sphere pulsed, expanded, and something began to emerge from it. I didn't have time to think, didn't have time to plan. I pulled out the pen and wrote on my own arm. Closed the door. The effect was immediate and violent. Reality convulsed. The sphere collapsed inward, sucking everything toward it. The carved text on the walls ignited. Priest screamed, a sound of pure rage, and lunged toward me. Barakiel intercepted him, tackling him to the ground. They grappled. Priest's enhanced strength matched against Barakiel's angelic nature. The door was closing. I could see it shrinking, the thing that had been emerging being pulled back through. But it was fighting, clawing at the edges of reality, trying to keep its grip. I wrote again, seal it permanently. The pen burned in my hand. Not painful, but intense. The ink that flowed wasn't ink anymore. It was light, pure and absolute. The words I wrote didn't just describe reality, they commanded it. The sphere vanished with a sound like thunder. The carved text crumbled to ash, and Jonathan Priest went limp in Barakiel's grip. For a moment, we just stood there, breathing hard. Then Priest started laughing. You think this is over? He gasped. You think closing one door changes anything? There are others like me, dozens, hundreds. We've been preparing for centuries, and this was just the first attempt. Then we'll stop them too, I said. With what? The pen? He laughed harder. You can't keep it forever. Eventually you'll slip, make a mistake, write the wrong thing, and when you do, reality will crack and we'll be there, waiting. Barakiel stood up, leaving Priest on the floor. What do we do with him? Good question. We couldn't kill him. He was human, engineered or not. Couldn't turn him over to authorities. Couldn't let him go. I looked down at the pen in my hand, thought about what Priest had said. He was right. I couldn't keep this forever. Eventually, I'd make a mistake, unless I changed the rules entirely. I wrote one more thing. Jonathan Priest forgets everything about the pen, Samael, and his purpose. He returns to being an ordinary professor. The words glowed, faded. and Priest's expression went blank. Where am I? He asked, looking around confused. What happened? You had a breakdown, Barakiel said smoothly. Too much stress. We're friends of yours. We came to help. Thank you. I think I need to see a doctor. We left him there, confused but harmless. In the hallway, Barakiel turned to me. That was dangerous. Rewriting someone's mind. I know. You're changing. The pen is affecting you, making you more comfortable with using it. I know that too. I tucked the pen back into my jacket. But what choice do I have? They'll keep coming, and I'm the only one who can stop them. Barakiel was quiet as we walked back to the car. Then, you need training, real training. How to use the pen safely, how to defend yourself against entities that want it. Who could train me? I know people. Watchers. Old angels who remember when the pen was first forged. It won't be easy. It won't be safe. But it's your only chance. When do we start? Today. He started the engine. Because Priest was right about one thing. This is just the beginning, and the next ones who come for you will be ready. I looked out the window as we drove, watching the city wake up. Ordinary people going about ordinary lives, completely unaware that last night, reality almost ended. I thought about what I'd learned, about being engineered, about being a failsafe, about the pen and the brasa viva, and the weight of carrying both. And I thought about the prophet's words. This isn't over. He was right. This was just the start. But I was ready. I had to be. Because I wasn't just an auctioneer anymore. I wasn't just human. I was the bearer of two of the most dangerous artifacts in existence. And I was the only thing standing between creation and those who wanted to unmake it.